what was I just going to say? The thing is that Charles Darwin said that any muscular expression of an emotion intensified that emotion. So that if you were experiencing
like
sadness,
anger,
and anger,
the pillows,
or sadness, if you let yourself get, pout, that will. So it seems kind of strange, like not very, like you'd say, not very adaptive evolutionarily. That if you have a negative emotion, that you're expressing it in a way with increased tension, things that are really only going to exacerbate the negative emotion.
Well, the Torah keeps talking about, I give you a choice this day between life and death, choose life. And it also says, the reason for these commandments, I give you these commandments so that you may live. So the Torah understands that the human being has a deep death wish, a deep self-destructive tendency, kind of a tendency to pull down, to compress the neck, to tip the head back, to cramp yourself, and to destroy yourself. And so it says, I give you these commandments so that you may live, so allow your neck to be free, think your head forward and up.
Huh. It really does put stiff-necked people into a totally new perspective.
And they're coming from Egypt, which had a major death cult. Like the pyramids were where they put the dead pharaohs, and they'd bury live people in there with them because it was like people wanted to go with the pharaohs to the afterlife.
Right.
And I mean, if you go to church or you hang around Christians, how much they talk about heaven and hell and what it'll be like to be with Jesus. And like in every minute you spend thinking or talking about the next world, you're not living this world.
You're not living in this one.
So.
But how does, if I give you a choice between life and death, how does muscular contraction and all that, how does that?
Well, it kills you. Like unnecessary muscular tension will kill you off. And unnecessary muscular tension is just an example that the human being has as many tendencies to destroy itself as to perpetuate itself. So I'm just pointing that there's a huge death wish and a huge self-destructive tendency in people that is just as large as the desire to live.
Right.
I mean, we see that around us. People who drink too much and try to fast and smoking and having unprotected anal sex with other guys.
Well, some of these vices, it's a cost-benefit analysis. You have to run on each of them. But, huh.
Yeah, so the whole point of the mitzvot is so that we may live. Like I think that's in chapter 5 where Moses says, speaking for God.
And live not in a literal sense, but in the sense of kind of experiencing life.
No, in a literal sense as well. I mean, I think Jews are the oldest, have the highest life expectancy of any ethnic or perhaps even religious group in the United States.
In the United States, right. But I think the longest living groups tend to be in the East, from what I understand, in Japan and so would that be a testimony to their something?
Yeah, I think that would be a testimony to what they're doing. I think it'd be worth emulating. But I think when Jews have been free of persecution, they have produced thriving societies, thriving communities, and thriving individuals. So people who are living, I think, not just longer but and healthier. Like Jews didn't tend to be as proportionally affected by the Black Death as they wash their hands.
Right. Well, but also, though, it turns out that there's a particular genetic mutation that makes people kind of very much less vulnerable to HIV, and that's connected to, I don't remember if it's resistance to tuberculosis or Black Death, but Jews also have a kind of an evolved resistance to certain
and a resistance to allowing other men to bugger you up the anus without a condom.
Yeah,
like
that's an evolved resistance as well.
Yeah, it's an evolved genetic resistance. That, I'm going to decide this day that I'm not going to allow men to bugger me without a condom up the ass anymore. Right.
It's easy for us to make that choice.
Yeah, it's much easier than for the goyim, because I mean, even though it can be extremely pleasurable.
Right.
I think they warned CIA officers in the Afghan campaign that if they got captured and raped, that they shouldn't think ill of themselves if they enjoyed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting for two reasons. One is that, the prostate is supposedly like the male G-spot.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, and so
I don't have any first-hand experience there, but
well, I do because I've given digital rectal exams in the hospital, and,
Oh, okay.
and I can certainly testify to the strong reaction men will have to having their prostate stimulated in that way.
Right.
So that's why gay guys say straight guys lose out. But the other is that Afghans are, I don't know where I read this, but supposedly they have the Pashtuns, the main ethnic group in Afghanistan, have a long history of kind of gay love poetry. And but the CIA really instructed not to feel bad if they enjoyed
it might have been the Russians, not to berate themselves if they got an erection when
right.
was going on.
Well, the erection happens. Erection and ejaculation will happen when a man when a man gets raped.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a source of
even without a reach around.
Even without a reach around. I mean, even if you have a really inconsiderate rapist who doesn't attend to you in that way, men will, and it's a source of kind of guilt and shame and confusion for men.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Women also have I can understand
have involuntary orgasms.
Involuntary during sexual assault, and that's also a source of.
I think that just means that they really wanted it all along.
Right. In the case of men, it's an involuntary physical response to having their prostate stimulated. In the case of women, she was into it.
Dying for it.
Wow, who knew that Parshat Eikev could
shed such light? It's like
So what else? So I was
okay. 7:22, 23. God will deliver you the Goyim nations in Canaan. Will thrust these nations from you little by little.
Yeah,
you have to annihilate them quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Lest the beasts of the fields increase against you. But that's
right. That's right. Yeah.
So if the Canaanites were fled immediately, vast stretches of the land would be unpopulated, open to uncontrollable habitation by wild beasts.
Right.
Many of them dangerous. So the great victory would come at an unacceptable cost. So that's one thing I've always said. The Canaanites are good for keeping the animals under
It's
control.
kind of pest control.
Yeah, pest control.
Right.
Like you can say a lot of negative things about the Canaanites, the child sacrifice. One thing you can't say is they're not good for pest control.
So I had never. Yeah, this took me by surprise. I'd never heard this little by little thing. I don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not because. The whole, I guess, the injunctions to genocide that we see in the Torah so often make me imagine the conquest.
I think they'd want to get it over quickly.
That it's an obliteration, like you just go in there and annihilate them. Yeah, but here, right, you can't do that because you'll have too much empty land. So it's slowly until we have time to populate that. Then you commit genocide after they've fulfilled their biblically ordained role as kind of pest control people.
And but those slow creeping genocides can be quite tricky. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but it's usually much more effective if you just go in like the Tutsis against the Hutus,
right?
The Tutsis against the Hutus,
right.
And they just took the machetes and they just like hacked up 800,000 of them
in the course of like a month.
Yeah,
that was the Hutus went in
so
fast.
It's usually much more effective.
Right.
Commit genocide is to just go in there and start hacking them up.
Because you have the element of surprise.
Bit by bit, often the people that you're genociding can get quite upset and they tend to fight back.
Well, they catch on. Yeah, at first, in the shock and confusion of the genocide, you have a limited window there. That's what they say, like the fourth plane on 9/11. The first three, they had the element of surprise.
Right.
The people on the fourth plane, Flight 93 or whatever, had heard what was going on and had time to get pissed and mount a resistance. But so, slow genocides are
very tricky.
Very tricky.
Very tricky.
Very tricky.
It's like, don't attempt this at home, kids, without your parents' supervision. I mean, because you start a slow genocide and you just never know.
You're going to have a fight on your hands.
Yeah.
And who wants that? It's better to have them slaughtered like sheep to the slaughter. I mean, from the perspective of the genocide era.
And, you may not put a high premium on the intelligence of the Goyim, but they do catch on when you're doing a incremental genocide.
Right. No, but here the problem is again is that despite the fact that you have this incremental genocide, it'll happen little by little, and the Lord your God, despite the fact that it's incremental, the Lord your God will deliver them up to you, throwing them into utter panic until they are wiped out. So actually, He's promising in a way that even though it's an incremental genocide, He'll